Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the chemistry of acids and bases. But before we can get to acids and bases themselves, we first need to talk about water. Water is often called the universal solvent. Now, a solvent is anything that lets other things be dissolved into it. Water is special because it allows the most substances to be dissolved into it. Let's take a real quick look at a water molecule. A water molecule is two hydrogens bonded with one oxygen. Now, these bonds are called covalent bonds, which means the atoms share electrons. Due to the distribution of these electrons, one end of the molecule, the hydrogen end, is positive, and the other end, the oxygen end, is negative. Molecules that have positive and negative ends are called polar. Here we have a molecule of hydrochloric acid, which is one hydrogen bonded together with one chlorine. The hydrogen has a positive 1 charge and the chlorine has a negative 1 charge. So let's take a look at what happens when we place this hydrochloric acid molecule in some water. So what's going to happen in the water is that your positively charged hydrogen ion is going to separate from chlorine and head towards the negatively charged end of a water molecule because positive and negative charges attract. Similarly, the negative chlorine ion is going to move towards the positive end of a water molecule, and it's going to separate out the hydrogen and chlorine ions. This separation is called dissociation. Whenever a compound dissociates and one of the ions it forms is a hydrogen ion, that's called an acid. The next thing we're going to look at is a base called potassium hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide is made up of two ions. One of them is potassium, that has a charge of +1, and the other one is called hydroxide, which is an oxygen and a hydrogen that are super stuck together and have a total charge of -1. Now, just like we did with acids, we're going to look and see how this base is going to behave in water. The positively charged ion, potassium, is going to move towards the negative end of a water molecule. Similarly, the hydroxide ion, which has a negative charge, is going to move towards the positive end of a water molecule. And once again, just like with acids, they are separated or dissociated. When a compound dissociates and one of the ions it forms is a hydroxide or OH ion, it's called a base. There are some other very valid definitions of acids and bases that are used in chemistry. However, we're going to stick to the basics here and we're not going to go into those more complex definitions. All right, to recap everything we just went over, we dissolved some acids and bases in water, which is the universal solvent. Acids dissolved and formed hydrogen ions in solution. Bases dissolved and formed hydroxide or OH negative ions in the solution. And dissociation was when the ions in the compound split apart into their separate pieces. The next thing we have to discuss is the difference between strong and weak acids and bases. Here you can see we have some hydrochloric acid, HCl, that is mixed in with some water molecules. When the hydrochloric acid is dissolved in the water, the hydrogen and chlorine ions will dissociate and pair up with water molecules. The positively charged hydrogen ions will head towards the negative parts of water, and the negatively charged chlorine ions will head toward the positive end. You can see that every single molecule of hydrochloric acid separated or dissociated. This is called complete dissociation. Strong acids are the only acids that completely dissociate. On the other hand, some acids don't dissociate completely. For example, hydrofluoric acid, or HF, only partially dissociates in water. This means that some of the hydrofluoric acid molecules will ionize and split apart, but other molecules will stay together. Partial dissociation, or having some molecules split and some stay together, is what characterizes weak acids. The bases side of things is just like the acid side. Strong bases are those which completely dissociate, whereas weak bases are those which only partially dissociate. The base you see here, potassium hydroxide, is a strong base. When dissolved in water, it will dissociate completely, meaning all of the potassium ions will separate from all of the hydroxide ions. This complete dissociation means that potassium hydroxide is a strong base. The base you see now is called ammonium hydroxide because NH4 is the polyatomic ion ammonium. When dissolved in water, only some of the ammonium hydroxide molecules will split. Because it only partially dissociates, ammonium hydroxide is a weak base. To recap, strong acids and bases are those that completely dissociate in water, which means all of their molecules will split apart into their separate ions. However, weak acids and bases do not completely dissociate, which means while some of their molecules ionize, others stay together. I hope you guys enjoyed this video about acids and bases, and hopefully it helped you out a little bit. Remember to stay safe and wash your hands, and don't let the coronavirus get you.